Our Finance Minister Bill Morneau joins us now. Thanks for being with us, Minister.
Happy to be on your show.
So let's just start with this, the package structured so that there's a bit of cost sharing along the way. Is it even possible for you at this stage to know what the uptake on a program like this will be?
Well, we expect the uptake will be very significant. I mean, basically what we're saying is that for the small businesses, they're going to only have to pay 25% of their rent for April, May, and June. And for the landlords, they're going to get 75% of those rents. And of course, in many cases, the landlords were very challenged. So our expectation is that there will be a very, very significant take-up. It's for every business that's had 70% or more of a decline in revenue. And that means, a very significant number of those retail shops and restaurants that have been closed, and right up to $50,000 in monthly payment for rent. So it's a big universe, and we expect that most small businesses, most landlords will want to take this up.
Does your department have a ballpark figure on the total qualifying number, what this might add up to?
Well, of course we do. We're not. We haven't put a limitation on it, but we expect that it's roughly around a $2 billion program, and the provinces and territories have agreed to come on board for that for 25% of it. So the federal government is paying the lion's share of this in order to make sure that we get that support to small businesses. But it's been a cooperative effort that we've been working together with the provinces on for the last week.
Perhaps not surprising, you will have seen and heard the pleas from municipalities, many of them, of course, constrained in running deficits, that they need help. What's in the works for the cities of this country?
We know that people will be challenged really across industry sectors, really across the country, and municipalities are no different. So I've personally had the opportunity to speak to Mayor Iveson from Edmonton, Mayor Tory from here in Toronto, to talk about their challenges. That will be a continuing dialogue. Of course, the municipalities do work directly with the provinces, so that's that's their primary source of contact. But we're going to stay engaged, and many of the programs, of course, that we have put in place are supportive. The emergency response benefit is supportive for people who are not working at this time. So we'll continue to listen. There will be challenges across the country. We're trying to make sure that we deal with those most emergency challenges first, dealing with people first. You saw today that we're trying to help businesses bridge the gap to when this crisis is hopefully behind us, and that's important for us to do across the economy.
And of course, when you put the 3-month time frame on it, does that give us some guidance on what the government's thinking about when we're sort of normalizing our businesses?
We really aren't in a position, Amanda, to say exactly when we know where we'll be, in a month or 2 months or 3 months. We're going to have to continue to look at the emerging situation. What we're saying is we do have a line of sight on those months that they're going to be particularly challenging. So identifying April, May, and June we think is appropriate right now. You see it's consistent with what we've done in terms of the support for people. So we'll just continue to look at how we can make sure that we've got a strong economy when we come out of this. That's really what we're trying to do here, is we're trying to make the kind of support there now so that when we get out of this, we'll have businesses that can back to work, that people will be attached to those businesses, so that the investments today create a stronger economy tomorrow. We'll continue to take that approach as we see the emerging information in this crisis.
So there are, of course, two groups that have been asking quite vocally for support, two sectors. We've heard from you on one, and that's the energy sector with some credit relief. I think we've still heard from Premier Kenney that they'd like you to go further or do more. I don't know whether you think that credit relief package is enough for the energy sector or whether there's more coming for them. And then, sir, I'd ask you about airlines. We have yet to see any kind of plan for our airlines.
Well, in fact, those two questions in one way are sort of the same question. We do think that we need to provide support for those largest of enterprises across the country, those organizations that are facing immediate, crises in their organization because of changes in demand in the case of airlines, or whether it be in the hospitality sector or the energy sector. So we still have more to do. We're looking at how we can support the largest of enterprises to give them a bridge to the future. And that's work that's going on right now, and certainly we'll have more to say about that shortly. I don't have an exact time, but that's something that we're getting near to completion on.
You did mention, the health of the economy and the other side of it. In the mix here, of course, goes the health of the government. We are now into deficit territory, the likes of which probably you would not have dreamed 6 months ago. When you look at the percentage of GDP, which is that kind of net debt level that we were supposed to look at, it's a staggering one. What's your thinking about what we do with that on the other side of COVID-19?
I think. Look, there's a few things we need to think about. We started in with a very strong fiscal position, the best among G7 countries. You and I have talked about that before. What we're doing right now is we're making the sort of investments to preserve our economy so we can actually come out of it and be successful. Clearly, there are going to be challenges coming out of this, but all I can say is the challenges would be so much greater if we didn't actually provide some bridge for businesses and some support for people so that we come out of this intact. That's the focus. It's an emergency focus right now. And when we get out of this with a strong economy, we'll have to address those next set of challenges, which I agree with you will be real. But for now, the only course is to support us to get through this so we have that opportunity later.
Have you begun to factor in, and are people beginning to look at this problem we may have of this emergency spending that's happening now that may end precisely as a recession continues in this country? In other words, we may well be facing a continued contraction on the other side of the pandemic that we would then need stimulus for of a different kind. What we know for sure is the challenge we're facing today. I think getting to a conclusion on what it's going to look like in 3 or 5 or 8 months, that's not somewhere where we are right now. So we will be focused now on ensuring that we support people, and we will, when we get out of this, we expect have some challenges, but those, as I said, those challenges will be less because of the support we've given through this. So it's really about preserving that opportunity. And what we'll see afterwards, I think, that's impossible to judge right now. What is sure is that if we provide ideas like what we're putting forth today with rent support, there are going to be more businesses that are going to be able to survive and get through this than they would otherwise. And by providing that wage subsidy, more businesses will keep the connection to their employees through this time period. So we are making sure that we can address the challenges in the short term so that we have the opportunity to deal with those important long-term challenges. And that will be what will allow us to get through this. Some of the spending that's going on here, and I know there's a constant work being done by your department and others to update and adjust, and there's a lot of evolving situations here. But I want to just zero in, for instance, on the $9 billion in student aid. Does some of that replace spending that doesn't have to happen? In other words, is somebody doing the math on this so that we shouldn't just add up all of the gross numbers and arrive at a total because it's a little more complex than that?
Well, there are parts of the announcement around students that are consistent with what we've done in the past. We expect that there'll be a significant subset of the student population that will be eligible for the emergency response benefit because of their work history. For others, we are making sure that if they have the need, that they have some level of support, and then additionally that they can be, potentially involved in a volunteer capacity that's helping with some of the challenges we're going through. And then finally, of course, that we're making sure they have grants so they can actually go back to university. In a sense, there are some things there that we probably always would have wanted to think about, how we make sure people have the capacity to get back to university. But we know that if we don't support students during a time when they cannot get jobs, we're thwarting our future success because we won't have those graduates able to succeed. So it's very much about investing today so that we have a successful tomorrow, and students are a critically important part of that tomorrow.
In the U.S., there's a suggestion today from Steven Mnuchin that for energy companies, the U.S. might take a stake in those firms. Is that something that the government would consider here in having some kind of potential share in post-pandemic upside if you're bailing companies out?
Well, where we're going to start, Amanda, is not with any sort of bailing out for any sector. What we're looking at is to try and provide credit so those sectors can get through this time. So if you think about the airline sector where you started today, you know, there's a real challenge in getting from where nobody's or virtually nobody's flying back to normal. So the best thing we can do is provide credit. And that's the hope, that we don't actually have to bail out companies or don't have to take equity, but rather find a way to get people through this. What you saw in 2008, 2009 is that there were some companies that went into bankruptcy or CCAA, and you know, therefore there was some decisions that were taken during that time. We're trying to not have those decisions by giving credit at the appropriate time. And I think you'll see largely consistent efforts around the world trying to make those businesses, enable the businesses to get through this time without having to have the government take equity.
All right, I am at time, but when we say credit, there is obviously an understanding that some of that credit will go wrong and taxpayers will own it. In other words, we are backstopping things that may not pay out for us.
Well, I think we'll have more to say on that in the very near term. And as we do, you'll see that we're thinking about how we can create the right incentives, protect Canadians, protect the government, so that we can actually move forward. But also, yes, we'll always have to recognize that some businesses will be extremely challenged and some will almost certainly not make it through. We're just trying to make sure that that is as few as can be possible through the support for people and for businesses.
All right, Finance Minister, great to have your time today. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Bill Morneau is Canada's Minister of Finance.